can you please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much again for the introduction on all the nice words. And yeah, it's always my pleasure to address students and give my experience and whichever way I can help possible. So yeah, quickly moving on to the presentation. Sorry. Yeah. So,
kindly you can press hide button at the bottom.
Okay, me sir.
Yeah, yes, please.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Please go ahead.
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, so main idea or the agenda which me and Dinakaran sir had was to, of course, simplify the process of preparations, going to masters abroad. And a lot of people might have in mind that it might be a challenging process or it has a lot of steps and processes and things to prepare, which is true. But if we cut down to, or simplify it to few steps, like, have a B, C, D, and a proper plan, it's quite easy process. And also most of the applications in the universities abroad have a very good student interface, so which is going to be useful. So I think we had quite an introduction about me. So after finishing my bachelor's, I came to pursue my master's in Netherlands at TU Delft. It's been 3 years. I've been staying in Netherlands, and currently I'm working as a data engineer. So it was a wonderful experience, and I'll share what are the steps and important things which I took and which might be useful. So just the agenda of the presentation. I'll be going through, of course, as I told, the steps which are necessary and the different ingredients which made me, pursue my master's here in Netherlands. And the whole talk or the presentation kind of relies on US and Europe universities because that's where I was focusing on. But of course, there are other countries like Canada, Australia, and many more. So it can, I'll try to be as generic as possible. And most of the things which I'm telling will be applicable for any universities you apply abroad. And also before moving on, I would say this can be a more interactive session because a few things or most of the things which I'll be telling is pretty generic. So I'll really like you to hear any questions which you guys have or any clarifications in a specific slide or a specific topic. So I'll make sure that my presentation is quick so that we'll have a lot more time for discussion. And if you have any personal questions or any difficulties in one of the topics here. So starting with the steps or to have a very broad idea to where to start is planning. Of course, anything we do, for example, during bachelor's or for example, preparation for exam or preparation for, submitting a paper or conference, everything needs a proper plan. And when I mean by planning is very important is when you do what. So there are different things which you need to do, but you should also be prepared and structured about the planning. And I will revisit this planning part at the end so that after knowing all the steps, I will tell you when to plan what. So it will be easier for you to understand the whole storyline of the steps. So what I started with is when I was in my second or third year, my master's, bachelor's, my mistake. I was having interest to pursue my master's, like learn something beyond what we have been taught in bachelor's, and I felt foreign universities had much more research facilities and research opportunities, and of course we get a much more exposure to a lot of other latest technologies and state of arts available throughout the other countries which are actually being used. So that was my main reason to apply for masters. So I started with shortlisting universities. This is one of the, I think, first steps which I started with because you need to be sure of what universities you're going to apply, and second, what courses you're going to apply. So it might be a little tricky to narrow it down to the particular course and university, but it's a very nice way to start your application process. So what I did was I shortlisted a couple of universities from US and 4 universities from Europe based on my profile. So one thing which is important for shortlisting is go through the the university website, and network and LinkedIn, and also get in touch with any of the students at that particular university, so that you'll get an idea of what kind of coursework and how's the quality of education. But mainly there are like a few countries which students focus on. One is, of course, the US. Second is Europe. And third is also Canada and Australia. I've known some people. So everything depends on what type of course you're looking for and what type of direction you're going to pursue. And I believe engineering, again, it's pretty famous, and it has a lot of beautiful universities and courses throughout the world. So it won't be a problem. So imagine you shortlist like 5 to 6 universities, and that's when the next step starts, which is preparing the documentation, which is another key important thing, because not all universities might ask for the same documents, but most of the documents would be overlapping, which I'd be telling you. So now you have all the documents, and of course, you need to take few exams, not few, sometimes one or sometimes two, for proving our English proficiency, which I believe most of us are good at. So the type of exams which we'll be moving on to the later part of the presentation. And finally, we should also be prepared financially, because sometimes a few universities might have very less tuition fee. For example, Germany and a few of the other German universities sometimes don't have any tuition fee. They'd be, of course, sponsoring us, but the living conditions or the living costs might be quite high. We can maybe come to a specific number, but it totally depends on the university and the country which you're going. So that needs separate preparation for each university. So this is the basic idea of the steps which we'll be going through. So now I'll be going a little deeper into each step, and feel free to stop me or at least take notes of whatever doubts you have, so that at the end we can revisit and come back. So as I told you, use shortlisting universities. It's the start. So you need to at least have a rough idea of what type of course or master's or postdoc which you're going to do abroad, like the field, or may not be too specific, but say, for example, in mechanical engineering, say power systems or vehicle engineering or high-tech engineering. So something like that, a very broad idea of what direction you want to dive into. And then you can start looking for universities which are best at that particular field, because of course every one of us want to land into the best universities as possible. So that's the reason when shortlisting, I would really recommend you to shortlist 1 or 2 universities which are really ambitious. Say, for example, which are, something like, this is the university which I definitely want to go. But it might be quite tough or challenging, but it's nice to have it, because we never know at the end, because applying universities has different criteria. It just not like depends on your CV, resume, or your CGPA. It depends on multiple other criteria, which I'll be telling you. So it's always nice to be ambitious and have your goals high and apply, and to also have 1 or 2 universities at the good range. And I mean by good is you're definitely sure that you might have a very high probability of getting into the university, and also apply for 1 or 2 universities which are safe. And when I mean by safe universities is you have 100% probability of getting into, because when you're prepared to do masters, and you should at least have a backup options like 1 or 2 universities, so that you don't end up regretting the whole application process. So you have few options in hand. At the same time, you apply for 1 or 2 universities which are really ambitious, and which are like your top priority. And as I told you, each application or each university will have clear details in their website. So it's important to go through the university website. For example, you shortlist 5 universities, and each university will have a particular link for the application processes. So go into the link and make sure that you check for the application documents and application deadline. So that's quite important about the universities. So you have now a very good idea about what university you want to take, what course you want to approximately go to, and different documents which are required. And when I mean by documents, there will be some common documents. And one of the very important and one of I feel personally the important document is the statement of purpose or the motivation letter. Sorry. So this is something which they read from top to bottom when you're applying to a particular university. And here, what it actually has, the essence of this document is why exactly do you want to pursue your master's? Like, what's the purpose behind pursuing master's, and why do you want to do it? And what made you apply for that particular university, for the particular course? Why this country? So this in itself can be a separate session or a different talk, because I have a lot of points to discuss here. But to give a main idea is to be honest and be a little true, like why you exactly want this university. And few important points are it should have a very good storyline. And when I mean by storyline is, say, for example, you start writing your motivation letter, like first paragraph. And of course, it should have a specific link to the second paragraph and why this university, why this course, and why this country, and what made you pumped up to actually apply for this course and university, and what will you achieve in the future after graduating from this university. So these are things to keep in mind. And of course, you need to start this early, at least a couple of months before applying, and have multiple drafts and try to proofread, similar to publications of papers. We have multiple drafts and multiple proofreadings from professors. So similarly, you can send it to the seniors, send to the students who are pursuing their masters there to check and make sure that it's a top quality. That's quite important. And again, in your planning, you need to make sure that a specific document from a specific university will have its own criteria. Say, for example, a university A might ask you points 1, 2, 3, and university B might ask some other points. So we make sure that the details are correct when you're applying for that particular university. You cannot have one particular motivation applying for all the universities, like 2 or 3 universities which you're applying. That's it. So make sure that it's specific to that university, and make sure that it's, of course, within the word count. We might have a tendency to write it for 3 or 4 pages, but usually it's 1 to 2 pages. Something to keep in mind. And then one of the things which is, again, a little underrated is CVResume, which is, again, quite important, because as soon as they read your motivation, they also need some validation, right? What have you done in your past, and what have you achieved? What is your experience in terms of academia and outside academia? What is your portion of responsibilities? Have you gone to competitions? Have you gone to symposiums? Are you a part of managing a particular team? So everything is shown in the CV or resume, as you see here. But sometimes the words are used together, like few universities ask for CV, resume. Not a lot of difference, because usually for applications they require a 2-page document, unless you're applying for a PhD abroad, where they might ask you an extended CV, which is 3 to 4 pages long. So it depends on whether you're applying for master's or PhD, but I assume that mostly people will be interested for masters. And second important thing is the sections and heading. And every CV, at least from my experience, should have a personal bio, a very small paragraph explaining what you did and what you want to achieve in the future, like maybe 4 to 5 lines. And then your academic achievements, your skills, and finally your co-curricular activities are something which is important. And I feel in all the documents, again, when you're applying, it's very important to stand out, to be on the top of the crowd, or be a little unique. And for this, the publications or conferences you attended would be a very important asset, because this shows how different are you compared to others. Because out of 100 people who are applying, there'll be not even 10 people, or less than 10% of the applicants would have a publication at the end of the start of masters. So if you have one, of course, that will be a huge asset, and it will make you stand out, and of course, give you an edge or advantage over other applicants. And even if you have participated in conferences, if you have presented your work, that will also be an asset, of course. So these two would, make you stand out, something to look for. And then for any university, they also need a validation by, this document called the letter of recommendation, or LORs, which is usually given by our professors at the university, or the professors who you did internship with, or in your summer, if you have attended any internships, or if you've done internship in a company, they can provide you with recommendations. So to have a generic idea, any university application would ask for 2 or 3 recommendations. So it's nice to be prepared well ahead, to go to your professors, or approach your managers at your internship or firm to tell them, okay, I'm applying for university, so it'd be nice if I get a recommendation from you. It'd be a huge asset for my application. So it's better to network and talk in advance, so that you don't have any time crunch. Like, for example, that deadline is next week and you're going to ask for a recommendation to a professor, and because they might also be really busy, they have a lot of other works. So it's better to prepare this in advance as well, similar to your motivation letter. And it depends on the university. So for US, they just ask the mail ID of the professor, where they directly mail the professor and ask a few questions about the student. But for Europe, for example, the university which I'm studying in, they just ask a PDF copy of a recommendation letter. So there are different versions. So it's usually be the PDFs, or the scanned copy of a letter for European universities. But for US, they ask a mail ID to have it, little more confidential questions, where the professor might not be willing to sometimes share. So it will be a little different for US universities. But more or less the process same. You just need to put the mail ID instead of the document. And finally, as I told you, few exams to keep in mind is GRE, which is mostly a compulsory one for US universities. And it has 2 important sections, which is verbal and quant. So basically, you'll be having a set of 40 questions for verbal, and another set of 40 questions for math. The quant section is usually pretty easy and generic, based on our 11th and 12th standard math, and also a little bit of logical reasoning and analysis. But the verbal, at least from my experience, it's a little challenging, especially the vocabulary and the words they use are pretty ahead. So this needs a preparation of a few months, I should say. But the other 2 exams are more focused for European universities like TOEFL and IELTS, where the level of English competency which is required is little lower than GRE. So imagine GRE is a level 10, and TOEFL and IELTS would be a level 6 or level 5. Like, it's a little less challenging than GRE. So when you prepare for GRE, of course, it'll be useful for other exams as well. And there are a few things which you should note. When you're applying for universities, they also ask for either a GRE score, as I told you, or a TOEFL score, or sometimes both. So at the time of application, make sure that you are ready with your scores. So that's one important thing in planning you should take care of. And finally, it's not necessary to sometimes pay the full tuition fee, or there is always a chance that any university, or at least 90% of the universities, will give scholarships for the students coming from abroad. And sometimes scholarship applications have similar documents, but might be a little separate. Like, you might need to have a separate motivation letter for scholarship. Like, why are you eligible for the scholarship, and why do you think we need to give you the scholarship? And that needs separate separate document. And sometimes the deadline is earlier, because they select the scholarship students first and then select the other students. So it's better to keep that in mind. And finally, of course, have make sure that you spend some time in this, because this is something which is quite important, and would be definitely a financial advantage for any student who's going abroad. So again, I wanted to come to the planning part. So to quick recap of all the sections we covered. So I usually try to have an Excel sheet. And in the Excel sheet, I have, say, for example, 5 universities. So for each university, what are the documents which is important? What are the deadlines? And what are the English exams which is required? And finally, are there any scholarship availability in that university? So these are the 5 things which I have in an Excel sheet. And then I try to fill up as much as possible. And any information is always available in the university website. So you need not ask a friend or you need not ask someone in LinkedIn, but university website is usually pretty clear. So that's why I told you shortlisting is pretty important. So when you know the university you're applying to and the course which you're applying to, you can get almost all the details from the website. So I hope this was pretty informative, and I went through all the 5 to 6 important steps and documents which are required. And now I think I would really like to take the time to answer your questions, especially if it's something related to a specific topic, or it can be a generic question. I'd be happy to answer. And always, sure, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Girish. Thank you for a nice presentation. So,
Sure,
students, you can ask your queries if you have anything.
I'll maybe stop sharing my screen so that so that I can see everyone. Yeah, great. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions in particular topic or want to know something else. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, sir. Is CGPA basic criteria? How much CGPA is required, sir?
Yeah, Dinesh. Yeah, I think it depends on the university, and as I told you, it's not the only criteria which is important. But of course, higher GPA is always going to help you out because it shows that you have done well in a lot of courses in general. But it's not the only criteria. So higher the better. But then even if you have a little lower, like for example, say you have not done well in few courses, so your entire CGPA would have come down, which you can very well try to motivate in your motivation letter. So I feel the top 3 documents which are important are your motivation letter first, because even when your CGPA is low, you can tell what happened exactly. Why is your CGPA low? Or you would have done well in few courses. Say for example, you had very high grades in 1 or 2 courses in which you're going to pursue your master's. So now that is more important compared to your entire CGPA. So I would say motivation letter and the statement of purpose is the first important thing. CV and resume, of course, is the second important thing. And they might not always look at the CGPA criteria because most of the universities have a cutoff. Say, for example, at TU Delft, the university which I'm studying has a cutoff of 7.5 out of 10. So
Okay,
if you have that minimum cutoff, you can always apply for that university. So I would recommend to check the university for the cutoff. And if you're above that, well and good. Sometimes if you're even little less, you can always put that in your motivation letter telling, okay, these are the reasons I didn't perform well, but these 2 courses have outperformed all the other students and I've got really good grades in which I'm going to pursue my master's. So that is really understandable. And mostly they will also don't have a very very strong influence on the CGPA or just that CGPA. So your entire resume is important. In that, CGPA is a good indicator, but you can always, as I told you, prove in the motivation letter that you are capable or you're worthy of getting into university.
thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure.
So, sir, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Can you just once again explain the letter of recommendation part for US universities? You said that some email ID should be mentioned, right? So, can you just explain it once again?
Yeah, sure. Even I felt I went through that a little quick. So when I mean by a different process, say for example, when I was applying for a US university, in the letter of recommendation section, instead of asking you a document, entire recommendation document, they will ask you the mail ID of that professor. So what I did is I, of course, informed the professor well before that, okay, I'm going to apply for this university and I'll be asked a recommendation in that university. So will it be possible to give your mail ID? So once the professor says yes, and I would give him the mail ID. And what exactly happens is, so the university directly contacts the professor So you give the mail ID, right? So the university sends a form to that professor in which it will have 5 questions to answer, like what do you think about the student, what is the best quality of the student, and comment on the advantages or skills of the student, how well have you known the student, and give a short description of uh, your views on the student. So this will be the 5 questions, and the professor needs to answer that. So that's a little different. But for few European universities, they will directly ask you to attach a recommendation letter signed by the professor in the letterhead. So that's the small difference compared to
So if I'm
US.
getting a letter of recommendation from a manager of some internship I have completed, right? So will they give their email ID? It is little tough to get the email ID from them, right? So what I have to do in that kind of situation?
Yeah, so that's what I try to network or talk to them a little earlier, saying that will it be possible for me to use your mail ID in the application form, so that they will be contacting you later stages. Usually it will be within a week, or because it's usually automated, uh, it's usually a robot which sends the form, so it'll be usually within a week. So I would say it's better to inform that professor or your manager well ahead, and make sure that they're also checking their mail regularly. It might go to spam, usually not, because university mails are usually with high importance, so they won't. But it's also nice to inform earlier. At the same time, after application, you can get in touch with your manager again, telling that you might receive a mail from that university soon. So kindly have a check in your mailbox. It'll be great if you keep me updated. So these are the 2 things. But of course, mail ID would be available, but it's better to get a permission before using the mail ID, because professor's mail ID would always be available in the university website, right? But we cannot directly use their website, and they would be surprised if suddenly a university from mail comes in asking a recommendation for any student. So it's always nice to inform, network, and keep them in touch. Like have a proper communication. That'll be really useful. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I understood.
Sure. Yeah.
Sir, are there any scholarship platforms should we approach for?
I think there is not a particular website or a portal where it gives you all scholarship universities or all the scholarship opportunities. But when you search within a university, say for example at UDEF, if you go to master's program, and then each program will have not each program, master application in general, and then at the end there'll be a scholarship form. So this is just for one university. So I think for any university, they would usually have a scholarship form, unless they're not collecting tuition fees. For example, TUM in Munich, Technical University of Munich, does not connect any tuition fee, which is usually very normal. Say, for example, around 500 euros per semester, which is like 40,000 rupees just for your documentation and few purposes. So those universities might not have scholarship, but most of the US universities, around 90% of the universities, have scholarship forms and scholarship applications, which can be found in the university website. So when you're applying for a particular university, when you go to the website, go to the application documents, and one of the documents or one of the sections should be a scholarship application. And sometimes it might have a separate set of questions. And few of the questions are, why do you think you deserve a scholarship? And what are the skills you have which might make you get the scholarship? And please tell your outstanding achievements. So these kind of questions will be separate for the scholarship form, which you might need to a little bit have preparation and have an idea. And it varies for a particular university. So I would say the university website is usually the way to go, and it will have specific details of that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
So, sir, I have another doubt, sir.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sir, some universities may ask to submit a study abroad essay, right, sir? So we should submit them in particular as a separate thing, or we have to include them in SOP, sir?
Submit what? I didn't get you, Saran.
No, sir. Actually, some university asked us a study abroad assignment, sir. So why should we
Okay.
study in abroad? What is the purpose to study in that particular country, right? So we have to include them in
Yeah.
SOP, or we have to give
Mhm.
it a separate thing, sir.
Yeah. Sometimes it's mostly, I would say it's better to include in the motivation, because you need to have the purpose and the motivation of why are you, exactly targeting that university and why that course in particular. But few of the applications, say for example, it might have a separate question. Like some university, say for example, UT Austin in US, when I was applying, they didn't have a separate section for motivation letter, but it had 3 questions. And I think one of the questions was something similar to what you asked. They were like, please motivate your reason for selecting this university. So when the question is asked separately in the form, then you need not repeat that in the motivation letter. So, but when that question or when that particular thing is not asked in the application, then it's always a good idea to include that in the motivation letter. So I would say when the application separately asks for it, then write it and do not include that in the motivation. When it's not asked, then include that in the motivation letter or the cover letter.
So different university, they have a different procedures, right? To write. So depending on the
Yeah,
university, we have to write the recommendation of letter. Right? Okay.
exactly.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why I think shortlisting was one of the first steps, which I told you. So when you have the list of universities, then you go to the website, and each university will have its own process. But mostly the documents are common, few documents, like for example, motivation letter, recommendation letter, CV, and your test scores. These are pretty common, but the rules might change a little bit with the university. So that's why I was constantly telling to keep a track of the website and maintain an Excel sheet of what to do and not to do for a particular university. So it just simplifies the process. And I've also known few students who hire consultants and pay some extra money for applying on their behalf, which I wouldn't recommend, because when you do things by yourself, you understand what exactly has to be done. You're more personal towards motivation letter. When you draft your own motivation, you're much more authentic and you're yourself. And instead of hiring external consultants and they ask for huge money, which might end up getting admit, but I think that's not the way to go, because when you're more personalized towards your applications and you know where you're applying and you are interested in a particular field, you're passionate about say mechanical engineering or a specific field, mechanical engineering or any part in general. So it's much more personalized. So I would say, and these 5 steps will be exactly what they will be doing as the consultant. So I would say we can easily put efforts, and when you're planning ahead, like 3 or 4 months before applying, it'll be really easy to follow this 4 or 5 steps, and it'll also give you a nice experience to understand who you are, what you're really interested with, and plan your own masters. And it will be an achievement once you get the admit from the university. And it's a nice process, and it's definitely worth investing time in.
Sir, do we need to have a collateral before joining the abroad universities?
So coming to the financial aspects, so few universities or most of the universities would ask you to pay a specific sum of money. Like they of course need to make sure that you're coming abroad, and you need to make sure that, or at least the university or the government should make sure that you would be comfortable spending time, and you're comfortable having a house or financially. So most of the universities would ask to pay the tuition fee a little earlier than going there. So that is one thing. And few universities would also ask to show a little bit of credit in your bank account. So say, for example, they know how much it would take for a normal student to spend here in Europe. So they would ask to have a specific amount in your bank account, and they would also ask the tuition fee. So it's better to be prepared about this. And depending on the university, I should say, but Europe costs around if you put 1 year, for me it was around for tuition fee. It definitely depends on the university. Each university has different tuition fees. I cannot comment on that, but a living cost was around 10-15 lakhs per year. So you can be a little prepared of that. But again, as I said, few universities have no tuition fee, few universities have scholarship. So this shouldn't be a factor for you not to apply. Of course, when people talk about financial investment with the tuition fee, we have a question like, what is the return of investment? Like, in how many years will I be getting back the money, or in how many years can I finish the loan? There'll be different kind of questions running in your mind. But I would say the return of investment is also quite high, because usually after your master's, you are highly skilled migrant here. So for highly skilled migrant, the pay in US as well as in Europe is also considerably high. And I think within 2 or 3 years, I think your return of investment could easily be achieved. So it's worth spending, but make sure that you are really passionate about it. You really love what you're doing. You need not, just for the sake of masters. If you come, it might be, ending up to be a little more challenging than you thought. But if you really like, doing masters in a particular field, even though if it gets tough or even if it gets challenging, you still really like what you're doing, and you won't give up, and you'll have the perseverance to actually, finish and achieve really good things here. So yeah, it's nice to research or have an idea about finances, but of course it might be a little sometimes might be hard to imagine that you're spending this much money for 2 years, but most of the cases really worth it, and of course the return of investment is also quite high.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Sir?
Yeah, sure. For UK, I think it's mostly merit based, but I've not focused that much on UK universities, because I've applied to Europe and US, but I think to make it a little bit generic, it's usually merit based, based on your motivation letter and your CV and resume. And sometimes, of course, as I told you, you'll have a separate application document to fill in. And in some extreme cases, you might have an interview for getting the scholarship. Like, for example, a few universities might give you a quick call just to talk to you in person. So which you should be ready about, which I forgot to mention, but it's very rare. Sometimes when universities want to confirm, they give you a video call. But at least for now, based on my knowledge of applications, it's usually merit-based, because they don't have a common exam which can judge all the other students from abroad, right? For example, a student from Australia is applying, a student from, say, India is applying, and Canada. So they don't have a normalized scale of exams. So it's usually based on your bachelor's or based on your past experiences, which is merit-based, yeah. Sure, yeah.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, if I'm applying to a European university, specifically Germany, there are different types of universities. So which ones should I be considering? There are technical universities, University of Applied Sciences.
Yeah. True. That's a very nice question. So to just put your question in context, so when you're applying for masters, there are few separations. So one is masters with thesis, another masters without thesis, and there can be a masters which is oriented towards industrial aspects. So these are the three different streams, and I think most different is the masters with thesis and master without thesis, which usually have industrial experiences for non-thesis kind of masters. So these are the two. So I would say it depends on your interest. So if you're more towards academia, like you want to go into research, you want to dive a little bit detail into the latest technologies and publish papers, or you want to become a professor in the future, or you want to become a research scientist, I would say, of course, go for a master's with thesis, because it will not only teach you, of course, how to publish a paper, or how to write a scientific paper, but also the different steps involved in coming up with good scientific research. So in that cases, of course, you go with master's with thesis. But then if you want more of an industrial exposure, like for example, you perform a research and you want to immediately apply that in an industry. Say you're working on a state of art technology and you want to apply that to make things better, like immediately see results. So in that way, you apply for more of non-thesis masters, which is industrial oriented, which is also pretty much famous in Europe, especially since we have a lot of automotive companies like headquarters BMW. So they have a lot more industrial oriented thesis, industrial oriented masters as well. So I would say it depends on your interest and depends on your future goals. Like, what do you want to become? It's hard to decide now, but you might have a slight idea of where you are more interested, whether in a scientific academia or more research focused area, or much more applied area where you want to work on an industry or apply your research in an industry point of view. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure. We have a question in the chat. So I'll just open the chat. So just to read the question, whether scores of GATE exam will be accepted when you have public universities, criteria for admissions. GATE, I personally feel GATE is a more focused on Indian universities for MTech and IDs and other universities. And of course, few companies in India accept GATE, but for universities abroad, usually they are not familiar with the GATE, since it's more regional, country oriented. But if you are, say for example, if you have some achievement, say for example, if you are in the top 100, you are the top 100 All India rank in GATE, of course, that's going to be an asset which you can mention in your CV, icon of your achievements, and you can mention that in your motivation, because GATE is again one of the most, or at least one of the competitive exams, not only in India, of course, throughout the world. So it may not be recognized, but your achievement in GATE is, of course, you can publish it, or you can put that in your motivation letter or in your CV, telling that, okay, I'm having this much rank, which is a really valuable asset in India, given the number of students who take the exam. I am, in the top 95 percentile of the students who gave the exam. So that is definitely going to be in a point where you stand out, or you are a little bit out of the box. But it's not standard criteria where they don't ask you, okay, I need this much GATE score to apply for that particular university. Okay, that's not there. But your achievement in the GATE score can be used as an asset in your applications. So I hope that answers the question. Sure. Yeah, you're welcome.
Sir, which one would you prefer, sir? Pursuing a master's in a broad branch like mechanical, or pursuing a master's in a narrow branch like in particular like additive manufacturing, or in particular, sir?
So yeah, so that is again a little personal question, depending on your interest. And I would say because a few universities, like for example, TU Delft offers masters in mechanical engineering and offers different specializations, like as you told, additive manufacturing, high-tech, vehicle engineering, power systems. So I would say it's nice to be having a broader interest. But if you have a specific interest, of course, you can put that in your motivation letter, and it tells that you're a little more planned and you're specific. But it's always a nice idea also to be honest, saying that you are interested in mechanical engineering in general, and I want to experience and explore different options at the university. And in my second year, I would be focusing on the things which I'm more interested to. So I would say to also keep an open mind. At the same time, if you have a really strong interest, as you told, in additive manufacturing or something, and then it's better to go into that particular field, because that you're interested in it, and you have much say, for example, you have done a couple of projects, research projects or internship, and you want to grow in that particular direction, then it's a good idea to go towards it. But if you are still in an experimenting phase, say you liked mechanical engineering as a whole, and I want to explore more options, then it's a better idea to have an open mind, go broad. And after a few months, you can, take electives, or you can take a specialization, as I told you, in that particular field. So both options are totally fine with the university. So it depends on the student's interest and depends on your past work as well, and how do you want to grow your.
Thank you,
I
sir.
have another doubt.
Yeah, sure.
So if you particularly take any university from India, like Amrita University, we are having a separate quotas for their state students, right? So the second preference will be for other country students and other state students. Is there anything like
Okay.
that for abroad university, for their own citizens? They have first preference, or separate quotas are being presented for them. So
Yeah.
how it will affect the opportunities for other country students?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question as well. So every university, of course, they have a specific, not quota, but it's like a specific set of international students which they should take, because the world ranking of a university depends on how much mix they have. So at least for the world ranking, and to bring cross-cultural people across different countries throughout the globe, would be a usually a very important thing for the university. So they will always have a percentage of students, but it's again, it's not like giving preference. So here I think there is no special cutoff, say for example for the nationality dependent entry. It's very less, I should say. So if you have the qualifications, if you have the interest, if you are well prepared, if your motivation is clear, and if they see the qualifications in your CV, they will give you an opportunity. It's not like they won't. Say, I think, to put your question in a little more context, if they have two students, say for example, one from Indian nationality and one from the country nationality of the university, they would not prefer the regional student over international student based on a few criteria. So if you have better qualifications, if your motivation is better, I think they would prefer you over that particular student. Because here again, masters, it's not a very high number of students. For bachelors, it's usually really high regional students here. For example, Netherlands, mostly in bachelors, 95% are Dutch, 5% are international. But for masters, we have a percentage of 25. So out of 75 students, we have 25 international students, 25 to 30. So which is a pretty huge number. And even in US universities, given we have a very good English basis, so they also don't discriminate against nationalities. If you're, because especially they know the value of international students, and especially Indians, we have quite a good English basis, and also we bring in a lot of assets, so they don't discriminate. That much discrimination is not there. Using or
Yeah, now it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah. How to work and study in CERN? CERN, not again having that much exposure to CERN, so I think I might need to get into that. Maybe we can discuss that later when we get time. I can go through it a little bit. And I have another question from Selvin. Which country you'd suggest to do masters in AI and ML? So to put that in a broader umbrella, so masters in data science again is quite booming up, at least especially that sector is growing for the past few years. We have seen it grow, and there are a lot more job opportunities coming up. So there is no maybe specific masters in AI, which might be a little focused, I would say, but there are a lot of masters opportunities in data science in general, like data analytics, business analytics, and then they have a specialization of neural networks, AI, NML, that field. So usually both US and European countries are good at math and applied sciences in general. So I would recommend you to use 3 websites, not 3, at least 2 websites for for checking the ranking of that university. So there are some, if you Google top universities, at least to check the ranking, there'll be the top 3 links usually will have rankings. And if you go to the website, maybe I can send it to you later, where you can shortlist or you can filter the universities based on the course. So if you put applied science, and if you put applied mathematics or data science or data analytics, it will show you the top universities in that particular course. So I would say to go to a ranking website and then filter it based on the course. So then it will show you the top universities, and then you can choose which universities you are more equipped to go. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Sir, one doubt, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, in the application process, it is better to go with the consultancies or applying by ourselves?
Yeah, that's what I tried to cover a few minutes back. So consultancies, again, I would say if we put in efforts, I think it is not a straightforward process, but a process which is easily manageable, and it can be much more personalized if we do it ourselves. Consultants, of course, say get them set sum of money, like say 50,000, and give you an admit of some random universities. But then you won't be having any idea of what that university is, what that university is good about. You wouldn't have got in touch with the professors or a lot of things. Your motivation letter would be drafted by them, which is not a good idea, because motivation, at least I feel, it should be little more personalized towards yourself. So you need to make sure that you are really interested in that particular course. You should be clear of why are you going to masters, why that particular university. So I would recommend to spend little time in analyzing your own interests, be aware of what you really want, and give some time to bring in all the documents. And I think that's the only things. So you have an idea of what universities you want to get into, what documents you need to apply, and then apply. But it's not as straightforward as I'm telling, but it will take some efforts, but at the end it's really worth it. So I would really recommend to put some efforts and do it by ourselves. Little challenging, but worth doing it at the end. You'll be much more satisfied, and you will have a much greater idea of yourself and the university which you're getting into.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Grish. So
Sure, sir.
it was a wonderful session. Actually, you have answered a lot of questions.
Sure, sir. Yeah, that's what
this
I really
will
liked. Yeah.
help some students to go for masters. You will be very happy. And
Sure, sir.
so it was nice presentation, and
Sure.
I hope sometimes I want to extend this all to all the students of my institute. I hope I can
sure.
request you further to
Sure.
one more presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. We will meet
Sure,
again.
sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, sir. Yeah.